15th, 2021. I'll read the standard COVID entree. Due to the COVID-19 state of emergency and pursuant to the Governor's Emergency Order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, the Swanzey ZBA will be holding their meetings remotely using the web-based program Zoom. Board members and applicants will be participating in the meeting remotely. The public may access the meeting online by visiting www.zoom.us, using the Zoom app, or by calling 929-205. Whoop. Someone took my packet away. Give me a moment. Lost control of my screen, it appears. Can't minimize. There we go. I'm sorry. Board members and applicants will be participating in the meeting remotely. The public may access the meeting online by visiting www.zoom.us, using the Zoom app, or by calling area code 929-205-6099 and entering meeting ID number 844-6749-9371. If you have any difficulty accessing the meeting, please call area code 603-352-7411, extension 108, or email mbachler, BACHLER, at swanzeynh.gov. More information on public access to the meeting is available on the town's website at www.swanzey.nh.gov. I will ask Beverly to call the roll and read our agenda for the evening.
Okay. Chief Tebow?
I'm here alone in an office in Keene.
Adam Mulhern?
I am here and I'm alone in my office.
Brian Rutgers?
Here, alone in my office.
Bill Hutwalker?
Beverly, I'm on the phone with Bill. He's having a hard time hearing the audio.
Okay, it looks like he's here. I see his video. Ann Karasinski, we'll come back to him. Ann Karasinski?
Ann Karasinski, present, alone in my office.
Eric Callio?
Will be absent this evening?
He's absent.
Yes.
Bob Mitchell, I see is also absent.
I believe so, yes.
Julian Excel?
I am here and I'm alone in my office.
Okay. Wayne
Lecklider.
Lecklider. Sorry, Wayne.
That's okay. I'm here alone at home.
Okay. The agenda for the Zoning Board of Adjustment for a meeting of March 15th, 2021 is as follows. There will be a regional impact vote. The minutes for February 8th, 2021 will be considered. There will be an election of officers and appointment of a ZBA alternate position. And the following public hearings. ZBA number 21-004, special exception application. Avandru Development Group requests to grant a special exception pursuant to Section 5, Article B2B of the zoning ordinance for an 84-unit multifamily residential dwelling on property situated off West Swanzey Road and shown at tax map 72, lot 98. The subject property is located in the business district. ZBA number 21-005, special exception application. Dory Masting requests to grant a special exception pursuant to Section 3AA, Article B of the zoning ordinance to construct a detached accessory dwelling unit at 326 Matthews Road. The subject property is shown at tax map 38, lot 13, and is located in the residence district. ZBA number 21-006, variance application. 17 Suburban LLC requests to grant a variance from Section 5, Article B3 of the zoning ordinance for an addition to the dwelling at 23 Suburban Acres Road to allow a side setback of 14 feet where a 20-foot setback is required. The subject property is shown at tax map 18, lot 82, and is located in the business district. ZBA number 21-007, variance application. Monadnock Land Planning on behalf of Furlone LLC requests to grant a variance from Section 5, Article B3 of the zoning ordinance for an addition to the building at 12 Business Center Drive to allow a side setback of 5 feet where a 20-foot setback is required. The subject property is shown at tax map 36, lot 5, and is located in the business district. ZBA number 21-008, variance application. Fieldstone Land Consultants on behalf of Patriot Holdings LLC requests to grant a variance from Section 4, Article A1 of the zoning ordinance to allow a self-storage use at 304 Monadnock Highway. The subject property is shown at tax map 16, lot 4, and is located in the business district and the rural agricultural district. There may be other business and discussions as required.
Thank you, Beverly.
You're welcome.
Some issues we'll take up in the order that you had given them to us. After reading the agenda, we need to make a determination this evening if any of the 5 cases that are before us would rise to the level of having a regional impact. And so anyone has any questions on the applications that we have before us? We'll give the board a chance to look down through. This is a robust agenda this evening for us, and we'll talk about that in a moment as well. If I can just give a couple of minutes for the board to look through. Matthew?
Yeah, just to jump in, Keith. So this evening we have 3 applications that are carried over from the February meeting.
Okay.
Those first 3 applications, and
Thank
the board actually made a determination at your last meeting that those first 3 applications did not have a regional impact. So
Thank you.
the board would really just need to consider that for the last 2 ones.
I thank you. I was thinking about that earlier, so thank you for clarifying that. So for matters of the board, we are just looking at numbers D and E. The Monadnock Land Planning. Oh, that's number 21-007 and 21-008 Fieldstone Land Consultants on behalf of Patriot Holdings. So we're just looking at those 2 to determine whether or not there's any regional impact. We can take a motion that's phrased in the positive, I think we've been trying to do. So we're voting yes on a, so if someone could make a stab at a motion relative to regional impact, I'd appreciate it.
Keith?
Yes.
Morning.
How you doing, Adam? How are you?
I'm doing well, sir. I'm doing well. So yeah, I'll make a motion to state that neither of these applications warrant regional impact status, and I vote that way.
Okay, that works. Do we have a second?
Second, Brian.
Thank you, Brian. It's been moved and seconded into motion.
We're lost without Motion Mitchell here.
Well, we'll be fine. We'll be fine. Motion by Adam that none of the 2 applications, additional applications, new applications that we're considering this evening that are on tonight's agenda have any regional impact. A yes vote is that it does not have a region. These don't have a regional impact. I'll ask Beverly to call the roll.
Ann Karasinski,
Yes, I agree. they do not have an impact. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill Hotwalker,
Yes.
Brian Rutgers,
Yes.
Adam Mahern,
Yes.
Keith Tebow.
Yes.
Did the alternates also vote on this, Mr. Chairman?
I would say yes at this point. We didn't, they may be seated for sure. So yeah, I would say so.
Okay. Julian Excel,
Yes.
Wayne, like,
Yes.
like lighter. Wayne, thank you.
Thank you, Beverly.
Welcome.
We'll now take up minutes from our February 8th meeting. It appears as though everyone who's on this call tonight is present and at that meeting. So we'll entertain a motion on the minutes from February 8th, 2021.
This is Ann Karasinski. I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes from the meeting.
Thanks, Ann. Do we have a second?
A second.
Thank you, Brian. It's been moved to second to approve the minutes of February 2021 as presented. Do we have any question on the motion?
Oh, this is Ann Karasinski. I have a question.
Thank you.
If Eric is absent tonight, but he
Yeah.
was present at that meeting, do we need him to be able to vote on the minutes? Or will the majority pass?
No, I think as long as we have a quorum here of people that were at that meeting.
Okay,
And we have
Yeah.
for very unusual, we have far exceed a quorum with who is here tonight, who was here at the last meeting, which is a good thing.
excellent.
Thank you, Ann. Any other questions or comments or edits to the minutes? Seeing, hearing none, I'll ask Beverly to call the roll.
Ann Karasinski,
Everyone was here?
Ann Karasinski, yes.
Bill Hotwalker,
Yes.
thank you. Brian Rutgers,
Yes.
Al Mahern,
I abstain.
okay. Julian Excel,
Yes.
Bob Mitchell is not here, Eric's not here. Wayne Lecklider,
Yes.
Keith Tebow.
Yes.
Thank you, the motion passes.
Very good. One last bit of housekeeping before we move on to our hearings this evening is we have a couple of elections we have one election, which is of officers, and we have an appointment of a ZBA alternate position. So we have two motions. I know at my request, Matthew distributed a couple of motions. After checking with myself and Adam, he and I are willing to stay on as chair and vice chair moving into this next year. So there's one motion there that we need to deal with. And then secondly, we're going to need a motion to appoint Eric as an alternate member for a 3-year term, expiring in 2024. So I'd like to entertain a motion on the first situation relative to an election of our officers. Anyone so
I
inclined?
so move that we re-elect Keith Tebow as the chairperson of the zoning board and Adam Mulhern as the vice chair of the zoning board.
This is Ann Karasinski. I'll second that.
Very good. Moved and seconded to appoint myself as chair and Adam as a vice chair.
Okay.
Very capable vice chair, mind you. Any questions on the motion? Beverly?
Ann Karasinski,
Ann Karasinski is yes.
Bill Hotwalker,
Yes.
Brian Rutgers,
Yes.
Edel Mahern,
Yes.
Julian Excel,
Yes.
Bob Mitchell is not here, Eric Callio, Wayne Lecklider,
Yes.
Keith Tebow.
Yes,
Okay, that passes.
thank you. And then,
Hereby make a motion that we accept Eric Callio as a alternate zoning board member for a term of 3 years.
thank you, Brian.
I will second that. Adam Mulhern.
Thank you, Adam. It's been moved and seconded to appoint Eric Callio as an alternate member of our ZBA for a 3-year term expiring at town meeting in 2024. Any questions on the motion? Beverly?
Ann Karasinski,
Ann Karasinski, yes.
Bill Hotwalker,
Yes.
Brian Rutgers,
Yes.
Adam Mahern,
Yes.
Julian Excel,
Yes.
Wayne Lecklider,
Yes.
Keith Tebow,
Yes,
and the motion passes.
excellent. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Just one heads up, I do know that, as Matthew said, there were 3 of these public hearings that are carrying over, and we will work hard to get to them. There are 2 more after that that are on the agenda. Just let folks know that the board generally sometime between 9 and 9:30 at an appropriate time will take stock of where we are in the evening and try to make a decision as to how to move forward and to potentially delay an application or 2 or maybe none. But usually around that time we make stock and see where we are. We're going to do that, I'm sure, tonight with the possibly do that tonight with the amount of applications that we have. I do believe that Matthew is probably, as he usually does, is let folks know that in ahead of time who are at that back end of tonight's agenda. But just a heads up that's the way the board generally looks at how to move forward late into the evening. So with that, I will recuse myself from the first public hearing. I'll hand the reins over to Brian, and he and Matthew can work out the second part of this, or the continued application here from Avandru. So
And
I'll pick it up afterwards. Go ahead, Brian.
Just jump in quickly. Sorry, Keith, before you leave, I just wanted to let the board know, and also members of the public that are tuning in this evening, for the variance application for 304 Monadnock Highway. So that's the last application on the agenda. So I've been having some back and forth with the applicant and the New Hampshire Municipal Association on, you might be familiar with this property. It's across the street from the Cheshire Fairgrounds, and there's a rail trail that runs just in front of the property. And there was a question of whether or not they had the required frontage on a public street. And I heard back from NHMA late this afternoon, that based on the information we have right now, it doesn't look like they have the required frontage. So we think that they'll need to come back and kind of amend that variance to include a variance request for the lack of frontage. So I'm gonna just share an email. I shared this with Chad Brannon at Fieldstone this afternoon. And so he talked to his client, the property owner, and they're going to be requesting a continuance of the application.
Okay.
Just so we can kind of regroup and figure out this frontage issue. We just weren't prepared to really address it this evening. We are going to ask the board to continue that to a specific date, because we've sent out the hearing notice. So that way we won't have to renotice the meeting.
Okay.
And it's not something we don't need to decide that right now. But I just wanted for people that are on the call this evening for that application, we're not going to be hearing that application this evening. Just because it's at the end of the agenda. I don't want people hanging out until the very end. So I just wanted to make people aware of that.
No.
So, Mr. Chairman, it's Brian, I take a motion that we hear from the applicant, if they're on the phone, to see if they want to continue this, so we don't have to wait till the end of the night for people that may or may not be hanging on for it. If we're not going to hear it anyway, let's get it off the table for already.
Right.
Yeah, and I don't believe Chad was planning on joining the meeting tonight. I don't see him now. This email is his formal request.
Okay.
And so
Okay,
your next,
based on that, I propose that we continue this case. We still have to vote on that, right, Matt?
that's right. Your next regular meeting is Monday, April 19th.
Okay.
So do we take up a motion to move that, table this application until that point? Is that appropriate at this point in time, Matthew?
Yeah, just to continue it to the ZBA meeting on April 19th.
All right. Brian?
I make my motion amended so that this case gets continued to April 19th meeting.
Second on that?
Stan Karasinski, I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Ann. It's been moved and seconded to table and or delay really the request of the applicant, the variance application on behalf of Fieldstone Land and Chad on behalf of Patriot Holdings to our next meeting. Any questions on the motion?
A question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Matthew, it sounds like you're hesitant, but are you indicating that there is a frontage issue or that you're researching as to whether there's a frontage issue?
Yeah, I'm pretty certain there's a frontage issue, but I do want to just double check to make sure there wasn't any variance granted in the past for that. There's also just some question of what, because there's a Route 12 right of way, and then there's the rail trail, and kind of what ownership rights the state has for the rail trail exactly. So I'm pretty confident they'll need a variance for the frontage issue, but there's some additional research we need to do.
So along with that, I just want to make sure you're aware that Rayette has the 5-acre parcel to the north that is also accessed by that right of way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was familiar with that, but thank you.
Thanks, Keith.
Sure, Bill. Thank you. All right. Any other questions? I think we'll go to Beverly.
Okay. Ann Karasinski,
Yes.
Bill Hotwalker,
Yes.
Brian Rutgers,
Yes.
Adam Lahern,
Yes.
Julian Excel,
Yes.
I'm not sure again. Wayne Lecklider,
Yes.
Keith Tebow.
Yes. Thank you.
May I ask a question, Mr. Chairman?
Absolutely.
On the upcoming special exception application, is there some reason why the vice chairman is not leading the discussion tonight?
I guess that's a good question. I don't believe Adam sat on the first part of the meeting.
I see.
And so that's why Brian picked up the chairmanship of that. So I believe having Brian continue in that role probably is the best way to continue, given the circumstances.
I would
Okay.
agree, Mr. Chairman, that Brian has, a lion's share of what's already been said in the back and forth, and
Okay.
a little bit more background of what's going on. I did read the minutes, but I'm in agreement of your decision.
Okay. And the other question I had is, Bill Hotwalker also recused himself the last time. Is that also the case this time?
Yes.
Yes, it is, Beverly.
Thank you, Bill. So, so Brian, you need to seat 2 people tonight for those
That's
2
correct.
people. Okay, thank you.
All right. Take it away, Brian, I guess.
So let's see, we're going to try to pick up where we left off here. So we have Eric is not on tonight and Bob is no longer on at all, I believe. So we're going to seat Adam Mulhern in place of Bob Motion Mitchell. And we'll seat Wayne L. in place of Eric Callio for tonight. Is that acceptable to you, Adam?
Mr. Chairman, to be here, I'm part of the board, so I think there needs to be one more alternate to seat a full board, if I'm correct.
Well, you have myself, you, Ann Karasinski is also seated already.
Yeah, Jillian was seated.
And then
in
Jillian
February.
is seated. Oh, sorry. And then myself. Does that make sense? So all I was doing is replacing two people that were here that are no longer here. So seated for this will be Wayne L., Ann Karasinski, Adam Mulhern, myself, and Jill Exel.
There we go.
Okay.
I'm in agreement.
Wayne L., you good with that?
Yes, Brian.
Okay, so you were on for last month anyway, so you were listening to the whole thing.
Brian, let me just repeat. So you're seating Mulhern for Tebow and Lucklider for Hutwalker. Is that correct?
No, because they weren't seated last time. I'm seating Adam for Bob Mitchell, who was seated last month for this case,
Okay.
and Wayne L. for Eric Callio, who was seated last month for this case.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so just to make sure you and I are on the same page, we have Wayne L., Ann Karasinski, Adam Mulhern, myself, and Jill Exel.
Just repeat that again, please. Rutgers,
So you got
XL.
Rutgers, XL, Mulhern, Karasinski, and L. We'll just call him Wayne L.
Okay, thank you. 5 people, thank you.
All right. The case is continued, so the case never did close. It's still open to the public. Just want to make sure that we're all on the same page for the public that can hear me, that we did have Jack Franks. I believe he's still here as well. Yep, I see him there. And we had JP as counsel with Jack Franks, and we had Tom, who was a civil engineer. Is that still the case, Frank? Jack Franks, is that still the case?
Can you hear me?
Yes, can now.
Great. Yep, that is still the case, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. And we heard a lot of testimony from you, from your representatives. We also had a lot of questions from the general public. I wanted to make sure that the public knows that we did hear everything that was said, whether that's germane to this particular board or not. We do want to hear what people have to say, but there was a lot of comments last time. They were all recorded, and they all get passed on to the planning board if they're germane to that board. Just want to make sure that people have the comfort zone that they were heard. Their comments and questions and concerns are absolutely important to not only us, but to pass along, and for Jack and his crew to take into consideration. Matthew, I think you want to read something to us, yes?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Brian. So I did receive a letter from the Cobble Hill Pines Condominium Association on March 2nd, addressed to the zoning board. And that was provided in your packets this evening. The association did ask that I read this letter aloud at the beginning of the hearing. And just to note, the letter was signed by, it looks like 25 residents of the condo association. So I'm going to read that out loud now. To the Zoning Board of Adjustment, we, the board and community of Cobble Hill Pines, would like to register our deep concern regarding the special exception for the Avandru Development Group and their 84-unit multifamily residential development on Lot 98 of Tax Map 72 and West Swanzey. We understand that you must cast your vote based on the following questions. Avandru has had their lawyer answer each point in the affirmative. We would like to spell out our concerns and disagreement. See our responses below. Each criterion in italics. Special exception criteria. The first being the proposed use is similar to one or more of the uses already authorized in that district and is an appropriate location for such a use. Although it could be argued that there is a somewhat similar facility, Princeton Square, across the street, it is not appropriate to overload this location with another such facility this close. Just because there is one does not indicate that 2 in the same location is safe or appropriate. There are numerous differences between Avandru's plan and existing developments. The plan places the maximum number of residences and parking spaces into the absolute minimum allowances for space. The other comparable developments are set back from the road, surrounded with green space, and are aesthetically designed to fit in better with the traditional residential architecture in the area. It should be noted that unlike the current proposal, the designers of Princeton Square took great aesthetic pains to make the architecture appealing and in keeping with local New England architecture. From the minimum plans provided, it appears that the size of the individual apartment units will be substantially less than Princeton Square. Criteria number 2, such approval would not reduce the value of any property within the district, nor otherwise be injurious, obnoxious, or offensive to the neighborhood. We have not been given the time or funds to hire a formal assessment of the property values at Cobble Hill Pines and the impact this may have. However, we are unanimous that this development occurs, it will be a serious obstacle in our ability to sell our homes on Perry Lane. We already have homeowners who say they would not have bought their home here if they had known this was imminent. Without a doubt, the incidence of crime worldwide is directly proportional to the density of the population, and packing this many people in so small an area will increase the risk to all of us. Are the Swanzey police prepared for additional surveillance of the area? The plan is for a single entry to the complex from Perry Lane, despite the DOT's suggestion that a back connection to Gamarlo's parking lot would be a wise idea. No provision for this or discussion of it has taken place. Would a single entrance hinder the fire department's ability to access the property and get people out in the event of a fire or other emergency? Noise, car fumes, lights, and other activity of a large population in a small space will create an offensive nuisance for the neighbors. This affects the quality of life for the entire neighborhood. Criteria number 3, there will be no nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians. The DOT has studied the number of cars traveling daily on Route 10, but has not studied Perry Lane because it is a town road. The left turn lane they feel is sufficient is not at all helpful when taking a left-hand turn out of Perry Lane, which the majority of us and the potential residents of the development would have to do on a regular basis. The studies of this nature are planned for the future, but no facts are available yet. It is our experience that getting out of Perry Lane requires quite a long wait at most times, not just during rush hour. And adding potentially another 168 cars from the development also needing to get out will back things up considerably. There are also cars coming out from the development across the street, creating four-way traffic. We have no facts on the number of accidents on Route 10 in this area since the lane was put in, but expect it to be significant. This is both a nuisance and a safety concern. Pedestrians at the corner of Perry Lane and Route 10 are at high risk attempting to cross Route 10 at any time during the speed and volume of traffic, due to the speed and volume of traffic. Adding in multiple cars turning in and out of Perry Lane will make this almost impossible and dangerous. This intersection has not been studied by the DOT. The number of children in the community is bound to multiply with so many additional homes, which places them at risk in crossing to the park. Children wait for the bus on the corner of Perry Lane and Route 10, and the additional traffic will increase their vulnerability to hazard, both while walking and waiting. And criteria number 4, adequate and appropriate facilities will be provided for the proper operation of the proposed use. In the plan, the parking is uncovered and minimal. When snow needs to be removed, the only place renters will be able to take their cars to be out of the way of plows will be to fill up Perry Lane. Recreation space is severely limited on the proposed property, which will likely add a burden of residents appropriating the paths and properties in the neighborhood with or without permission. It is our sincere hope that each of our concerns will be duly noted and weighed in casting your votes. We also request that this be read aloud at the beginning of the March 15th meeting so that it is made public to all those present. Sincerely, the Cobble Hill board, which I mentioned is signed by 25 residents of that association.
Thank you, Matthew. The other thing I just wanted to make sure everyone's aware before we go back to public for comments is that this, just in case you are new for tonight, you weren't here last month. This is about Avandru building, an 84 multifamily apartment complex in the lot next door to Gamarlo's, right on Route 10. Okay, I guess we open it up to comments, questions. Is that?
Yeah, Brian, one other thing I wanted to note. So I have an updated site plan on the screen in front of you, and so this was provided in your packet as well. So just to note, since the February meeting, the applicant did add a sidewalk along the full length of Perry Lane on the south side of Perry Lane. So that sidewalk would be from the western property line to Route 10. And also at the corner there of Perry Lane and Route 10, they're showing a bus enclosure for children waiting to be picked up by a bus. So this sidewalk would be constructed by the applicant, and then the town would take it over just in terms of maintenance going forward. I did review this with the Public Works Director, and this is kind of a conceptual plan, but he's comfortable with what's proposed here. It's something that would be worked out further, kind of at that site plan review application point. So just wanted to draw your attention to that. But other than that, there aren't any other changes to the plans that were looked at in February.
Yeah, thank you for noting that. In fact, I remember Jack mentioning that they would consider putting in a sidewalk and a enclosed bus stall, if you will, getting the kids off Route 10 and onto the side road. So the fact that they've done that is very good. Jack, did you have anything else you wanted to add from last month? You want to go right to the public?
Yeah, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to chat a little bit about the letter that was sent in. And again, with me this evening, JP Harris, our attorney. I've got architect of record Tim Sampson and civil engineer Tom Duffield with me. I read through this note from the Cobble Hill Pines Association probably a dozen times, and really want to stress that I understand some of the concerns they have, and we're going to do our best to mitigate any of those concerns or all those concerns that we can. The sidewalk being a big one. I had some concerns myself about that, and as Matthew had stated, we're in the preliminary stages of working out the details of that. But at the end, next to Route 10, I'd also like to possibly put a little shelter there for the children or anyone at the bus stop in case there's some inclement weather, during the winter months, or even in spring and summer when it's raining. So I can assure the board that we'll work diligently to make certain that this is handled appropriately, and I think it'll be a really big add to the community and to the region. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to speak. Board members, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I do have a few things that I'd like to add about some of the concerns from the Cobble Hill Association, in that in proposed use is similar to uses already. Proper comparison would be is enumerated listed uses zoning ordinance, and to ask whether the projects is similar to a nursing home or hotel, or any of those uses, not the facility across the street. Although this one compares favorably to many projects, the ZBA is already approved. By right, a nursing home, hotel, or warehouse, as we spoke last month, could be built and gone right straight through to the planning board. The aesthetics, as they speak to, are really not part of the test and not a proper inquiry for this board. We will address those concerns at the planning board, and I know we're not giving the next door neighbors as much information as they would like, but I would just ask for patience in that we will give you at the planning board level next month, hopefully, if we're approved this evening, we will go through that. We will take those concerns very seriously, and we will work very diligently with the planning board to ensure that it is aesthetically pleasing. One of the advantages that the next door neighbors had at Princeton Properties that we didn't have was that it was a heavily wooded area. So they had, as we spoke to last month, a lot of old growth there. We don't have that, but we will put in some larger trees. And, you know, in a year or two, with the way the soils are there, we expect those trees can grow very quickly. We can put some trees in that'll mature much faster than some of the hardwoods. And that'll give a really nice buffered zone there. So we do take very seriously the looks and the aesthetics of that, but that's not a proper, we're not at that level yet. So I would just ask those folks next door to give us a little time to pull that together. And, you know, we welcome your input when we are hopefully at the planning board. We will take very seriously all of those into consideration. I just wanted to look through my notes here. One of the concerns that was raised is that the size of the individual units, and I can attest that we do meet all of the sizing that the town requires. We will have units that are comparable in size to the folks next door. And one of the concerns was this project is going to overload the location with residential housing. There's a need for this type of housing all over the state. I think everybody's probably heard workforce and affordable housing. You only need 1 acre to comply with the zoning requirements in Swanzey. We've got 4. I know that there are some concerns about the snow removal. We have 46% of the area of that 4 acres is green space. We're going to have ample area for snow storage. We're going to have ample area for the folks that live there, and even next door if they want to walk on the launch. It's going to be a reasonably good sized recreational area. That's 46% of of the entire lot is roughly, I think, 77,000 square feet of green grass. That's a pretty good sized area. With regard to number 2, the reduction of the property values and be injurious or obnoxious or offensive to the neighborhood, we presented an opinion from a qualified appraiser who lives in the area. And I understand that those that oppose the project did not present any of the evidence, and it didn't have enough time, they felt, to get that done. But we did, and we take very seriously that question that was asked. But we see improved values when we build these residential facilities, not diminished values. And I'd like to also state that there's no reason for anyone here to believe that or assume that this project or the folks that are going to be living there would be any more likely to cause crime than anyone that lives anywhere in the area. You know, when you get into the density aspect end of things, I think just by virtue of the fact that there are going to be more people, there may be more incidents of crime based on a larger population, but I don't think that that is anything that is out of the norm here or anywhere else in the country. I would like to reiterate that this entire facility will have state-of-the-art video surveillance systems inside the building, outside the building, and those cameras will be made available if there is an issue or a problem to local authorities or state authorities at any time. We take very serious the security aspect then of any facility that we build and we're involved in. And so I ask for a little patience with regard to some of these questions, because when you see the greater pictures of this facility, once it's developed through the planning board process, I think a lot of the concerns that you have hopefully will be addressed. So I appreciate the questions now at this level, though, because we need to be on our toes and make certain that these things are addressed. And I'd like to also point out that the town departments of safety that they have no concerns with this as well. The condo association didn't present any evidence or study to refute the conclusions of DOT, and I did send this entire thing to the Department of Transportation to have them take a look at it. And their response, which I did not submit to Matthew. Matthew, I'm apologetic for that. And I'm going to read, quote, "The average daily traffic on Route 10 measured at the Winchester-Swanzey town line was 7,000 in 2000 and 7,300 in 2013. Interpolated to 2021, this means today about 8,100 vehicles per day. The peak hour traffic in a rural setting is normally around 10% of the daily traffic. That would be 810 cars per hour at the busiest hour on Route 10. That is 13.5 cars per minute, or 1 car every 4.5 seconds. The trip generation for an apartment building, 7th edition, is 0.62 trips per unit in the peak hour. So if you have 84 units, the most estimated to be generated during this peak hour is 52 trips. So less than 1 per minute during the busiest hour of the day. I know that, you know, 168 is the maximum number of cars there, but our experience is that we're at about 65 to 70% of that. So the idea that we're going to have, you know, 168 cars there, you know, is a little misleading in that I understand we've got 168 parking spots, but that is the current zoning requirement. So for those folks that are listening and concerned about that, that's something that we have to put in. If we didn't have to put that many parking spaces in, we certainly wouldn't. So I understand that there's concerns from them regarding the vehicles, you know, the pedestrians, and we're working diligently to solve the pedestrian issue. And as far as the vehicles are concerned, we have a letter from DOT. They're completely fine with it. And I hope that that letter will help some of the folks that are interested in that end of it read through that information, and hopefully that settles some of your concerns on it. Adequate and appropriate facilities for proper operation. I did talk about snow removal. We have plenty of space available for that. And recreation, I did speak to that. We do have water, sewer, and power on site. So I hope I've addressed some of the concerns that they have, that they wrote on, and I'm free to answer any additional questions that anyone might have. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to speak through some of the concerns for the folks next door.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. So I'll open it up back to the public, and Matthew, I guess you'll be driving the hand raising and everything.
Yeah, so I'm going to turn to Beth Mucci. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Well, my question wasn't about this, though. It was about the other.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can you give us your full name and your address, please, for our records?
Yep. Beth Mucci, M-U-C-C-I, 53 Diana Drive, Swanzey, Pine Grove, Mobile Home Park.
Thank you.
But my question was about the other property, so I don't know if I should wait till later.
Oh, for, yeah.
What other property?
The Behringer, the one that you talked about earlier with the front setback.
Oh, so we're actually, we're not going to be hearing that case tonight. We actually continued that case to next month.
Yeah, it wasn't about the case. It was just whether or not the property will eventually be improved.
Well, I'll let Matthew handle that one.
Yeah, so just briefly, the new owner is seeking a variance to redevelop that property. So that is the goal, is to see it redeveloped and improved.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I do live a mile away from Gamarlo's. Been here 22 years. So I'm just tuning in because I'm very interested in this issue. I don't have a strong opinion either way. I don't live on Perry Lane, but I do travel that route every day. I take a left onto Route 10 from Pine Grove, and it's very difficult. But there's 2 entrances to Pine Grove, so I'm just interested in hearing this. That's all. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I appreciate your opinions. Thank you. Next.
Next, M. Delworth, if you can unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Last time you had some trouble. Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. My name is Melanie Delworth. I live in Cobble Hill Pines. I still have specifically two concerns, and I'm hoping that you might be able to assuage those concerns. And that is, the first one is sewer. I have huge concerns that this sewer system would be able to support another 84 households, multifamily households. It was stated in the minutes, I believe, when you talked about regional impact, that 1 acre, according to the ordinance, 1 acre per multifamily residence is required. And here we have 4 acres supporting 84 multifamily residential units. So I'm trying to understand why everyone feels that this will have no regional impact. The second is similar, and that's our water source. I have some real concerns about it being able to support another 84 multifamily units. And in the minutes, I believe, Mr. Rutgers asked if the special exception application would have any regional impact, and Mr. Tebow said it might affect the neighborhood, but not Winchester or other towns. And Mr. Heltwecker said there is no issue with available water. And I'm trying to understand what resource leads them to make that comment, number one. How reliable is that resource? Has there been any study? And also I'm confused as to why they were able to comment, those two individuals, when they recused themselves from this case. And my last comment is that Mr. Franks continues to talk about they could have built a nursing home, a hotel, I think tonight he even said a warehouse on that property. But there's a huge difference between those types of facilities where there isn't 24/7 traffic and residents. So I don't consider those similar to an 84 unit residential section or housing facility. So anyway, those are my my remaining concerns, and I'm curious as to how I can get those concerns addressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will try to address what I can as best I can. I'll incorporate some assistance from the A team, but let me see if I can answer some of your concerns, okay? And then you can tell me if we've done that or not. So when you're talking about Mr. Tebow and Mr. Hutwalker and being able to comment on regional impact, I'm also going to loop this back because you mentioned regional impact on 3 different occasions here. When it's talking about the 1 acre, it's talking about the sewer, the water, and their abilities to speak on this case when they're not seated. So that's a really good question. And the answer is regional impact when it comes to the zoning board and how it's dealt with has nothing to do with region of the town of Swanzey. I know it's like kind of a misnomer. What we're talking about is cases that will have impact into neighboring towns and cities, and whatever that impact may or may not be, whether it's fire, ambulance, police, water, sewer, highways. So in this particular case, it was decided that nothing we were going to hear last month had any regional impact. So it was a broad brush statement as far as any cases that we were going to hear last month. It wasn't specific to this case. Now, if there was some concern specific to this case, then we would have said that, and they would have then been recused from positions on that matter. I hope that makes sense to you. So the regional impact as far as other towns outside of the town of Swanzey. Water and sewer, we can't speak into that. The Public Works Department and the can speak into the water. I think Matthew is going to be able to speak into that for a second. And of course, the water is not part of the town. That's actually a private system. So I'll have Matthew speak into that. The other thing that I'll address here is your concern on the topic of hotels and stores or whatever else could be built here. I think a good example is we just went through an election cycle here in the town of Swanzey, and there were several zoning amendments that the town voters voted on. And our entire zoning ordinance is an amalgamation of the townspeople saying yes to this ordinance and no to that ordinance. And that's how we've come up with what's allowed and not allowed in the zoning ordinances in Swanzey. One of those is 5B, 2B, which is what we're looking for a special exception on for Mr. Frank. So what he's looking for. In that, the taxpayers have decided that in certain zones of the town, you can do this, that, the other thing, like hotels, for example. This property could have a 24-hour day, 7-day-a-week, multi-unit, multi-building hotel without coming to the zoning board at all. They just go to the planning board, build their plans and build the hotels, and they'd be good to go. With a special exception, they're allowed to do other buildings that are similar in nature and that meet all of the 4 criteria that by law have to meet to get a special exception to also do in that same zoning. Does that make sense? You'd have to unmute yourself.
Well, yes, I guess it makes sense.
It's confusing, but it's a little confusing. But that's why they keep saying, well, we could put a hotel here and not even have to come to the zoning board. Well, that's true, they could.
Right, I understand, but what makes it confusing is they keep talking about similar. And I don't find that similar to an 84 unit multifamily residence, where you've got traffic in and out and people and noise and possibly annoyance and nuisance 24/7. A hotel at best or a nursing home at best is not going to have that kind of that kind of density, if you will, on a daily basis. Would be in theory. And the other thing is that I find when you talked about regional impact, it's like, okay, so we're concerned with outlying areas, but what about the people that are right next door to this? I mean, I know it's a private water system, and that's one of my big concerns. It has not been as reliable as one would like, even with our small community. So the notion of another 68 people or more tapping into that is scary as all get out. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I suppose that it's all speculation, if you will, and nobody's going to know until it's too late. So anyway, but I thank you.
Well, I thank you for your concerns and your comments, and they are being heard by the zoning board. We also have a selectman representative on the zoning board. He's hearing it, and the builders, and these are valid concerns. Your opinions are valid and not taken lightly, okay? So I want you to be sure of that. Matthew, did you want to address the water and sewer?
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Yeah, just to respond to first the question regarding wastewater. So the facility would be connected to the town's wastewater system, and that's treated at the West Swanzey Treatment Center off Denman Thompson. And The application was shared with the Sewer Commission, and they didn't have any concerns about the capacity of that existing treatment facility to take on the additional units. As has been mentioned, West Swanzey Water Company, it's not a public utility, it's a private company. So unfortunately, we don't know the specifics of that utility's capacity and ability to serve the development. But I know the applicant has met with the West Swanzey Water Company and feels comfortable. I don't want to speak for the applicant, but feels comfortable with their ability to provide water for the development. I would note with the site plan review application and the building permit application process, both of these buildings would be required to be fully sprinklered. And so we would require that there's a sufficient water pressure to run a sprinkler system in the building. So that's something we'd be working on kind of in later stages of the project. Just to note, in terms of the uses that are permitted, the hotel use, nursing home facility, those are listed as permitted uses, which just means a development would just need a site plan review application with the planning board. Multifamily housing, along with some other types of uses such as manufacturing, are only permitted by special exception in this district, and that's a distinction that voters have made between that hotel, nursing home use, which are permitted, and this type of use, which is by special exception, and requires this additional level of review by the zoning board. So, I think voters did kind of distinguish between those types of uses and what they wanted the zoning board to take an extra look at, just in terms of the potential impact on neighboring properties.
Thank you, Matthew. Are there any more comments from the public before we wrap it up?
At this time, I don't see any members of the public there. Oh, okay, just 1 minute here. Veda Crew and Robert Wellington, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself.
Yes, I apologize for waiting until the end, but I was waiting to hear what anybody else was going to say before rebutting a couple of the things that Mr. Franks has said. One of them.
Give us, sorry to interrupt. You want to give us your address, please?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Robert Wellington, 73 Perry Lane, Unit 6, Swanzey.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I just want to rebut a couple of things. One, although I believe this probably would be an issue for the site plan review, but since Mr. Franks has brought it up on both occasions, I will mention this. He's mentioned the possibility that he could put in either a nursing home or a hotel without any problems from the zoning board. That is true. However, I believe in both cases he would run into serious problems were he attempt to do so with only one entrance on Perry Lane. Two, he's repeatedly said that approximately just under 50% of the total area is green space. Before it was just over 50%. I assume the difference is made because of the sidewalk that's been put in. However, looking at the map here, I would love to see somebody show me where that 50% of green space is. And lastly, the issue that we have brought up both times regarding parking, he has either not heard the question or sidestepped it. I'm not sure which. I will give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he did not quite hear the question as we were asking it. He has said both times that there will be plenty of space to move the snow when the parking is done, saying that the parking is done. That was not the question. The question was, since all of the cars are going to need to be removed for the parking, where are they going to go? I just thought those 3 points needed to be brought up in rebuttal to what he had said. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert. Mr. Franks?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah.
Entrance onto Perry Lane was discussed with DOT. We have had conversations with Mr. Garmarlo about the prospects of possibly connecting our two properties. And he's not there yet with regard to us doing that, but it did not impact DOT's decision with regard to traffic in and out. They were completely fine with it. I think that it would benefit Mr. Garmarlo's business next door, but at this point, he's not ready to give us a connection point there. Did say to me in conversation that there is a possibility of that. So, you know, we'll kind of move forward with that. It's kind of a gentleman's agreement, and we'll see how things pan out in the future. And he'll see if he finds some benefit to that. But that's a decision he has to make on his own. But I would like to reiterate that DOT was fine with the location of the entrance off of Perry Lane, primarily because of the distance setback from Route 10. We have a long chute there. We have ample area for cars to stack up that are leaving, you know, in the morning. To the 50% green space, that was a calculation done by the surveyor through the AutoCAD process. I don't have access to it, but I was told by the surveyor, who's a certified licensed surveyor in the state of New Hampshire, we have 46% green space. So when you extrapolate that out from 4 acres, 43,560 per acre, we got roughly 77,000 square feet of green area or area that would not be paved. With regard to the parking, we have 168 spaces as mandated by the city of Swanzey with regard to 2 spaces per unit. That's where the 168 comes from. And it's my experience, having been in this business now for quite some time, that roughly 70% of that or less would be cars. So for example, most folks that live in a 1-bedroom have 1 vehicle, and only a small fraction of the 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom units would have 2 cars. So for example, at Abenaki Springs in Walpole, New Hampshire, which is roughly half the size of this particular development, we have 43 units there, and we have about 32 cars. So to extrapolate out from there, if we had double the number of units in this particular location, we would end up with probably somewhere between 64 and 70. So if we've got 168 parking spots and 70 cars, let's even say we have 100 cars, that's going to be 68 free spots. And it's a bit of a dance with regard to snow and that removal of snow with the tenants and scheduling it. But we generally put a snow policy procedure in place where folks have to move their cars or get them out of an area by a certain time so that the snow plows can come in. I think in this particular situation, we'll probably have some smaller machinery and some larger machinery to adequately move the snow appropriately. And with 77,000 square feet of green space, we have ample area to store that snow. If it ever became a problem, then we would simply truck it to an area that could take it, as a lot of businesses do in the region. But we feel very comfortable with the space that we have, the parking spaces that we have, and the ability to move the snow and have the tenants move their cars. Ms. Wellington, I hope I answered your questions. If you have any more, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Thank you very much. Matthew, anybody else?
Let's see. I have, I'm going to allow David Painchode Sr. Mr. Pancho, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. And Melanie Delworth, I see that you have your hand raised too, but I'll go to Mr. Pinchot first because he hasn't had an opportunity to speak.
Yeah, well, thank you for that opportunity. I just wanted to address a couple of things Mr. Franks had to say.
Your address, please.
66 Perry Lane.
Thank you.
As far as the parking spaces, whatever available spaces may be left, I would presume that these people, like most people, will have guests. And I'm pretty sure that the guests are going to pretty much use up the rest of those spaces. I can't say for sure, but it seems likely. I did like the point of your pointing out the fact that Perry Lane is long enough, and you've noticed this, to allow the cars to, quote, stack up. Well, I don't think you'd like them stacking up and you trying to get out of your neighborhood or your driveway. So Perry Lane wasn't designed to stack up cars. It was designed as it was to service this neighborhood and turmoil on the side. And again, you keep talking about the DOT. The DOT has not, and you have told us, or haven't told us, but the DOT has said nothing about Perry Lane. You keep referring to the DOT. They talk about Route 10, not Perry Lane. Perry Lane is a separate issue. And when you plow all the snow into the green space, tell me, where are the young people going to go when they go outside? Where are they going to decide to walk around or do whatever it is they do? Where are they going to find the space? And I've got a feeling that our neighborhood is going to turn into the public park, we should say, because even in the summer, it's a great place and a safe place for the kids to ride their bikes around, for people to walk their dogs. I'm not trying to be a bad neighbor, but on the other hand, we moved here and we all purchased these homes because we liked the fact that it was going to be a peaceful, private place and not have a lot of population walking around. So those are my concerns. Well, I have others, but those are my primary concerns.
Okay, thank you very much. Your comments and concerns are obviously heard. They do keep talking about the DOT because Route 10 is not owned by the town of Swanzey. It's actually owned by the state of New Hampshire. So they're the ones that allow for traffic counts and curb cuts, etc., where Perry Lane is actually owned by the town of Swanzey. And that's where the curb cut was permitted. So, Mr. French, you have anything to say, or?
There we go. I keep forgetting to unmute myself. The town Department of Public Works Director has reviewed the proposal, Mr. Chairman, and has no concerns about additional usage on Perry Lane. Princeton Properties is also located adjacent to the establishment neighborhood with no negative impact. So, I think, that Perry Lane is a public way, and I think Mr. Gamarlo actually gave that to the town to allow for that development to be developed in the rear. I think without the kindness of Mr. Gamarlo, I don't know if that area in the back would have been able to be developed. So I know, speaking from experience of constructing roads of that size and nature, that is a well-built road. It is ample width, and I'm really happy that the time that I had to go down and take a look firsthand at the green space to the side where we're going to be putting the sidewalk, or where we hope to put the sidewalk, that we have a really level, flat area there. So the folks that built that road did a great job. It's wide. Maybe there will be a need for it to be striped in the future. Who knows? But that's up to the Department of Public Works. But again, the Department of Public Works had no issues or concerns about anything that we're doing there. So, but I certainly hear I hear his concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Matthew?
Looks like Melanie Delworth, do you have additional questions or comments?
Yeah, sorry to be the squeaky wheel here. I have a couple of comments, and With all due respect, Mr. Franks, your logic sometimes just defies logic. For you to talk about such a small number of cars in such a large housing development, it just amazes me. What would ever lead you to believe that a one-bedroom apartment would have, that all the one-bedroom apartments would have one car? Many times couples with two cars, and after all, we are talking about a building that is designed to house business people, or so we're told. So, you know, again, I think you're really underestimating the number of cars that that facility will incur. You know, you've got some 3 bedrooms, a significant number of 3 bedrooms, which may well be teenagers, so families with 3 and 4 cars. So, you know, again, the small number that you project, it just seems really absurd to me. The other thing I wanted to say is that I have, since this nightmare began, I have been to across the street to Princeton. They have 2 parking spaces per unit, and I've been there all different days, all different times of days, and I can tell you that hardly any of those parking spaces are vacant. It doesn't matter the time of day. Maybe a lot of people are working from home now. I don't know, but you do not see a significant number after 5 p.m., of course, of vacant spaces, and even at an earlier hour, you don't see a lot of vacant spaces. And the last thing I wanted to ask is, well, actually 2 things. One, is this sidewalk that you're talking about going to reduce the width of Perry Lane? And also, do we have any guesstimate as to how long construction would take of this property? Thanks, that's it.
Thank you very much for your comments. Appreciate that. Mr. Franks?
I'm getting a lot of feedback. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, Ms. Delworth, can you mute your mic, please? There, thank you.
There you go. The length of development is really going to depend on a few factors, when it's started in the fall or if it started in the spring, but I anticipate somewhere between 9 months and a year for it to be completely built out to get to CO. The sidewalk will not impact the width of Perry Lane. In fact, it'll be set off to the side of Perry Lane. And I think when we do have an opportunity, hopefully, to speak to the planning board, we're going to ask them about a possibility of a reduction of number of parking spots to get us a little more green space. I think we have the opportunity to potentially ask for a 25% reduction in number of units, parking units there. I'm only speaking from experience, from what I know and what I see in this housing development business. Believe it or not, a lot of folks that live in apartments don't have cars. They do use public transportation when available, Uber, prior to COVID-19. So there's a fair number of folks that don't have vehicles. But even if you know, there were 2 cars for every 1 bedroom and every 2 bedroom or 3 bedroom, we have met the requirements for the zoning board of 168 parking spaces. And we do have ample area for snow removal. So I don't know what else I can say at this juncture, but I'm confident that, you know, we'll be able to adequately provide area for parking for guests that'll be there, and for snow removal. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Brian, just to respond to the question about the sidewalk quickly. So that sidewalk would not reduce the width of Perry Lane. So it would be constructed. We believe we can construct it within the town's right of way. So it would be built along the southern edge of the road, but it wouldn't impact the existing roadway.
Okay. Any other comments before we close it out?
Mr. Pinchot, if you have additional questions or comments.
I just have one comment to the board. I would strongly suggest, before approving this, that you do significant research on the water company. Service hasn't been bad. I can't say it's been bad. There have been variations in pressure, which I presume will go lower unless they change their facilities. But for example, years ago, there was a time when the water went out about 4 a.m. on a Thanksgiving morning, and it was out for over 24 hours. This is a time when you have guests for dinner, you're preparing meals, a time that you absolutely need to have water. You could not reach, this is all verifiable, you can call anybody. You could not reach anyone from the water company. All you got is an answering machine. And they didn't answer the phone actually for several days after the water came back. And when they finally answered and we called, they just apologized for the inconvenience. They didn't talk about ruined meals or anything else. So I'm just saying, from my understanding, it's 2 dug wells and is servicing this neighborhood, Dollar General, and I believe Cutler School, which is closing anyway, but it also serves Princeton Square. So whether or not, I would just ask the board that they really dig into this and find out if that water company is actually going to be effective enough to service additional hundreds some odd people. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Pinchot, for your comments. I really appreciate that. What I can suggest to you is in the near future, if you would like to avail yourself of calling or contacting the Board of Selectmen with a concern that there's several people with a lot of concerns about that private water system over there. And unfortunately, it's outside of the jurisdiction of this board. But I do think that you should make your comments known to the Board of Selectmen. I think that's where it would go. Matthew, anybody else?
Brian, looks like I have one other hand raised. Nancy Mosteller. Ms. Mosteller, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can, thank you. And your address, please?
I'm at 67 Perry Lane, and appreciate the board listening to us and our concerns.
Yeah.
I have a question about the sidewalk. If we've done this so that it's the main travel path for our kids, who is going to be maintaining it during the winter? Can we be assured that we don't have our kids walking in the street? That is it the town or the apartment complex that will be maintaining the sidewalk? And what kind of expectation can we have of them, if it's the apartment, to keep that prepared? I know last year, for example, at Princeton, their sidewalks were terrible because they didn't have adequate staffing. And I know that from a friend who lives there. They've just had trouble in maintaining a maintenance person. Now, who knows why? That could be salaries, who knows? But who is going to be responsible for maintaining that sidewalk? And I guess the other concern I have is we do have a master plan here in Swanzey, and my understanding in reading that master plan is that this particular area is zoned for business, and the town has been pushing businesses to these zones as opposed to residential. Is that anything that the board is taking under consideration? This is quite a lot of people in a very small place, and I think legitimately it's not going to look as rural as we expect it to be living in Swanzey. I'd like to also point out that we don't have any major transportation going back and forth to Keene, so everybody has to have a car here. There's no public transportation. So we've got to consider that this is going to be a fully utilized parking spot. And so thank you.
So Nancy, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. So your comments are taken into consideration here. So the sidewalks being built, as it was said earlier, into the town's right of way. Once it'll be built by Avandru. Once it's built, the ownership will then be given to the town of Swanzey. So the maintenance, the upkeep, the plowing, all of that will be the town of Swanzey. Of course, as you know, living in West Swansea, there is I think we have 2 sidewalk plows now in Swansea. So they'll be taking care of that. Yeah, public transportation, yeah, that's when the Page Homestead over on Route 12 was built, they talked with the city of Keene. Well, it's actually home health care, community hospice and community services that own the Friendly Bus about transportation down 12. I think they've been contacted about transportation down 10 as well. And I don't think the 2 towns have gotten very far with that, but that's another consideration for down the road. But point taken. We have one more, I guess, and then we'll wrap it up.
One more, Brian. Nancy O'Brien, Miss O'Brien, I'll ask you to unmute yourself.
Hi, thanks. Nancy O'Brien, 29-4 Perry Lane. I hope you guys can hear me.
We can, thank you.
We can, yeah.
I'm not used to Zoom. So one of the things I'm just thinking about, more people are working from home. We've got students here. We've got a lot of people work from home. Could we speak about the electricity, the internet connection with this? Would it be lower with more of a, this 84 unit complex? Can we speak about electricity? Can we speak to the internet usage? Because we do have more people working from home, and I'm just curious to know the bandwidth and how that would be affected. Thank you.
So there's some new substations and new wires, high tension power lines that have been run through Swansea, a new substation that's been put into the Fitzwilliam area. So power isn't a concern at all. Internet, I think, Matthew, you can speak into that, right? I think we've been running new line, not the town, but somebody's been running some new lines through Swansea down 12.
Well, yeah, I know that Spectrum. Spectrum services this area. And I know that Consolidated is running new lines in town. I'm not sure their plans for the Route 10 corridor, but I do think I really can't, unfortunately, I really can't speak to the impacts this would have on broadband service in the area.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Yeah.
I know in the city of Keene for cable, there's a non-compete, so there's Spectrum. But as far as internet, there's several suppliers, so I really can't speak into that. That's outside of my scope, Nancy, but I appreciate your comments, though. I think that's it. Frank's, any last words before we close up public hearing? Can't hear you.
No, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'd like to answer the question with regard to the water usage. I have had at length discussions with the public water utility. We are actively working with the water commissioner for that particular facility, and our engineers are working now with the state of New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. They've indicated that they have adequate capacity there. We will be adding our own pumping station that has been designed or is in the process of being designed for the sprinkler systems, which will have no bearing on the water system. So there is also talk of the possibilities of, maybe a backup artesian well of some sort. So we'll work through the engineering process with the state and with the local water company to ensure that we have all of our bases covered there. And I'd just like to add that, this does conform to the master plan for increased development businesses that, in the area that need housing. We'll have some additional potential workers as a result of this much needed housing in our region. And I hope the board finds that, we've done a fair job in presenting our information here tonight. And I thank you all for the questions from the community and from the board and the opportunity to speak tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian, I have one more hand raised if you'd like to take one more public comment.
Okay, we'll close it out with one more.
Okay.
Robert Wellington, 73 Perry Lane, Unit 6, back. This is going to be very brief. I just would like to ask the board to remember that I believe they are voting on what is proposed, not what may be done at some time in the future.
That's correct.
So the suggestion that there may be an additional well, or there may be discussions with Gamarlos about other access, are not part of this proposal. Thank you.
That's a fair point, Mr. Wellington. I appreciate your comments. It is a fair point. Of course, we're only allowed to, at this point, consider 4 questions, and that's it. Once this gets over to the site plan through the planning board, then they can really dive into the weeds of what can and can't and will and won't be done. We know that the West Swanzey water system has been a concern of a lot of people for a long time, but that's really has to be a select board's decision on what to do, how to do it, and if to do it. But appreciate your concerns. With that, I guess we're going to close out the public hearing. Thank you, everybody. You can stay on and just listen to what transpires now. Any comments from the board? Everybody's ready to go to vote then, I guess, huh? They're shaking their heads. Okay, that's what we'll do. We'll move right on. For the public's consideration, we'll just make sure that you're aware that the zoning ordinances, as I said earlier, are done through amendments voted on by taxpayers, so we're only allowed to consider 2 things: a variance. And a variance is permission granted to use a piece of property in a manner that is more flexible than the ordinance allows, or a special exception, which is what we're hearing tonight, which is a permitted use that is allowed when clearly defined criteria are contained in the ordinance are met. And we have 4 criteria that we're allowed to hear in the special exception for this. And so we're going to go ahead and do that. But your comments, concerns, and questions are certainly apropos, certainly thanked, and are important.
And Brian, quickly, I'm just going to jump in. So just to note that, the next step in this process would be the site plan review application with the planning board, as has been discussed. And the minutes from the February meeting and this meeting would be shared with the planning board so that they hear the concerns that were raised. The site plan review application requires a public hearing as well. Just to remind the board can consider recommendations to the planning board as well. So if there's something that you really feel like the planning board should look at in their site plan review process, landscaping, buffering, access to the Gamarlos property, for example, those can be recommendations from this board for the planning board to consider. It's not a condition of approval of this application, but you're just pointing the planning board to some concerns that this board has, if that makes sense.
It does. It makes perfect sense. Thank you very much. I can say that to the board, I had a few concerns that I wrote down from last month that continued onto this month. One of them was a sidewalk on Perry Lane. I didn't think that the elderly and or children ought to be walking on a street. Thanks that they've addressed that issue. I also didn't think that children should be standing on a state highway waiting for a school bus, that there should be an enclosed area where they could be encapsulated, if you will, and it looks like that is potentially being addressed. Having an entrance and an exit on the Gamarlo side. I see that Mike Gamarlo is listening in on this. I know that the DOT has also recommended that be considered by the Gamarlos, and I certainly would like to have that considered, as another means of egress. And potentially, Mr. Franks, I would like to have you consider anyway. It was brought up last month that people had concerns about either noise and or exhaust from tractor trailer units that are allowed to park in the Gamarlo's lot for overnight. They're putting a tall fence along the west border. For those listening, that would be the tree line in between the proposed apartments and behind Gamarlo's, across that tree line to separate Cobble Hill. And so just a consideration. Anything else from the board?
And Brian, if I may too, it might be appropriate for the board to go through the questions, and then if there are specific things you want to you'd like to make the planning board aware of, and kind of include that in a motion.
Yep.
Final motion.
Thank you, Matthew. Appreciate that. Okay, hearing no concerns, we're going to go right on to the questions then. First question: the proposed use is similar to one or more of the uses already authorized in the business district and is appropriate location for such a use. I got you written down first, Wayne L.
Yes.
Ann?
Ann Karasinski, yes.
Adam? Adam Mulhern?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was muted. So I'll expand a little bit. Yes, I will say yes to this, and citing that there, have been, properties that have been listed in testimony that match a similar nature to this use. So it's been brought up in testimony, and then additionally, I think with the square footage of this particular property, the layout, and so forth, it lends itself more appropriate for a location for this use as well.
Okay. Thank you. Jill?
Yes.
Okay, and I'll add my yes as well, and also that the testimony, a lot of taxpayers had a lot of valid concerns and comments, and that my comment on this would be that the planning board reviews those comments. Moving on to question 2, such approval would not reduce the value of any property within this district, nor otherwise be injurious, obnoxious, or offensive to the neighborhood. Let's go with Ann. Ann
Karasinski, yes.
Okay. How about Adam?
I'll say yes, and I'll also say in terms of reduction of property values, there's been no evidence that has been submitted that would show a reduction in property value, whereas there has been evidence submitted that there would not be a reduction in property value by the applicant. So I'm just bringing that up, so I'll say yes in that term.
Thank you.
By an approved appraiser, in terms of where that information came from.
Thank you. Yes. Jill?
I'm a yes, and I would also echo exactly the comments that Adam just made.
Okay, well, given what you do for work, you wouldn't have any idea anyway, would you?
Not at all.
Exactly. Wayne L.
Yes, Brian.
Okay, I also agree that it's a yes and that there's no evidence submitted to the contrary. Question 3.
Brian, if I may.
Yes.
As you know, I know we discussed, or Matthew had discussed, maybe citing things that would be helpful during our questions here as things to point out to the planning board.
Yes.
Again, the bringing up of additional right of way on that property might help with some of the feelings of the neighborhood in terms of Camarlos. I know that's not something the planning board can necessarily force or anything, but just as a consideration, that would be something I think would be helpful in terms of some of the language here on our second question.
Thank you. Moving on to question 3, there will be no nuisance or serious hazard to vehicle or pedestrians. Let's go to Adam.
I will say yes, there will be no nuisance, serious hazard to vehicle or pedestrians, and this is based on both the testimony that was given of the DOT submission, as well as the lack of concern from our own, facility and road management. So that's my answer.
Jill?
Yes, and I would add that, not to keep reiterating Mr. Gamarlo, but certainly would love to see something potentially happen there, or some more exploration about Perry Lane. Although the town did sign off on it, it sounds like maybe hearing those concerns from the residents would warrant another look.
Thank you. I agree. Wayne L?
Yes, for all the reasons that Adam and Jillian mentioned. Yep.
Okay, Ann?
I'll say yes, and I'm not sure if now is an appropriate time to mention when you were talking earlier about possibly putting a fence along the west side of the property.
Yes.
To kind of mitigate the tractor trailers or whatnot.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
I'm not sure that really make a whole lot of, I'm not an engineer, so, but when I look at page 31 of the submission, there's number of the houses are directly behind that lot. And then there's a bunch of woods, and then there's, so that's just something, a fence may or may not make a difference. So
right.
In terms of considering, the expense of putting in a fence or any structure, how much of a difference might that make? And we don't know. There's just a lot of unknowns there, but I think certainly the when they do the site review and when the planning board, if this should pass, and they should, it's something they could think about, but I wouldn't put something in if it wasn't going to make a difference.
Yeah, I agree, Ann. So thank you for that. So I had mentioned that because there are things called what they call sound dome fencing.
Okay.
Which actually is straight up, right? And if you can see my hands at the top of it, it actually curves out.
Right.
So that when sound hits it, it actually bounces the sound back into a parking lot. And I'm certainly not suggesting that they do that. I mean, mandate that they do it. I certainly put it in their suggestion.
Right.
Because, in the summer times, tractor trailers, the Marlows are really nice to let companies use that as a parking lot so they can get some, mandated rest in between hours of driving. But I can also imagine in the winter time, the trees are a little barren, the leaves are gone, the evergreens are good, but the sound can travel pretty good in the winter. So I have no idea what they'll do, just a suggestion.
Absolutely. Yeah. We've had similar cases before us where we can't fix everything.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
So my answer is yes. I agree with everything that was said. I had a problem with the elderly and the children walking on the street and then standing at a corner of a highway, and it appears that has been taken care of. So I will also say yes to number 3. Finally, number 4, adequate and appropriate facilities will be provided for the proper operations of the proper use. Let's go to Jill.
I'm a yes, with further exploration with the water company and just making sure that it's adequate supply and pressure.
Thank you. Wayne L.
Yeah, I have the same concern as Jillian, but it sounds like there's a set of checks and balances in place that it has to be at a certain pressure in order to operate there. So I'm a yes as well.
Okay, Ann?
As Ann Karasinski, it'll be a yes.
Adam?
I'll also say yes, Brian, and the reason for that answer is that the authorities of the various concerns have all addressed, during testimony, any concerns they've had, and it seems that adequate preparation so far from the facilities as well as the operation of those facilities seems to be met by their standards. So from that point of view, I give myself a yes.
Thank you. I also say yes, but I also will add in that I have a concern about the West Swanzey Water Precinct, AKA the Brown system. I know that in Swansea we have a master plan and we want businesses and we want lots of big businesses but we've been around for almost 200 years and, right now we have an apartment complex going in and, West Swansea over the last many years has become more residential. And I also have a concern about our water supply over there, but that's really just a concern and all I can do is share it. So I think you're right, Adam, and there are checks and balances that are taking care of that. So all 4 questions have been answered with the limitations that we have as a board. Bev, would you like to call the roll on this?
Brian,
you need to have a motion first, Brian.
That's right. Yes, thank you. Anybody have a motion on this, please? Anybody at all?
This is Ann Karasinski. Brian, I make a motion that we approve this project and take the next steps forward.
See, I told you we'd be lost without motion, Mitchell. Nobody wanted to listen. Anybody second that?
I'll second it.
It's a Jill for the second.
Okay. And now I'll take the vote on the motion.
Thank you.
Ann Karasinski,
Yes.
Brian Rutgers,
Yes.
Adam Mulhern,
Yes.
Jillian Exel,
Yes.
Wayne Licklider.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you very much. Matthew, I turn the chair back over.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
All right. Thank you, Brian. Moving on to the second case this evening. That would be ZBA number 21-005, special exception application, Dory Masting request to grant a special exception pursuant to section 3-AA, Article B of the zoning ordinance to construct a detached accessory dwelling unit at 326 Matthews Road. The subject property is shown in tax map 38 lot 13 and is located in the residence district. If I am not mistaken, we have all 5 elected members
Yes, you do.
here tonight. I've not heard from any of them that they have a conflict or any reason why they can't be seated for this. So we will move forward with myself, Adam, Brian Rogers, Bill Hutwelker, and Ann Karasinski. I'll ask Matthew to give us a little background here for us and take us through.
Yeah, thank you, Keith. So as you mentioned, the subject property is located on Matthews Road. So I have an aerial map up showing the property boundaries in red. There's an existing single-family dwelling on that property located at the end of that driveway. And then there's an existing detached barn structure located on the kind of the southern end of the property here where my cursor is. So the proposed ADU would be located on the second floor of that accessory structure. This ADU would utilize the existing driveway in terms of parking. There's public sewer and public water available in this part of town, and that ADU would be connected to public sewer and water. The next slide is just showing a street view image. So you can see the single family home and that detached structure off on the left-hand side there. So you can see the single family dwelling and the detached structure are set back a pretty good distance from the roadway. And then the next slide is a proposed floor plan. So it's a one bedroom accessory dwelling unit. The dimensions are roughly 400 square feet in size. And the zoning ordinance allows for a maximum of 750 square feet for a detached accessory dwelling unit. We did send out public hearing notices to abutting property owners, and that was posted in town and in the Keene Sentinel. We haven't received any comments or concerns from neighbors or other members of the public. And no department heads have provided any concerns about this application. So with that, that's all the kind of background comments I have at this point.
All right.
Just to note too that Dory Matson is with us on the call this evening.
Thank you. We'll open we've opened a public hearing on this. I will ask the applicant or check in with the applicant, Dory Maston, whether she has anything to add to this application, speaking and whether she wants to speak to any of the questions that we have to answer as a special exception application. Ms. Maston, is there anything you'd like to add or tell us a little bit more about what you're looking to do?
Can you folks hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
No, I think the drawing speaks for itself. I know a couple of the neighbors and we've spoke to them. Certainly didn't hear anything negative, if anything, just well wishes. So I don't have anything to add.
Okay, thank you. Before we go to the public, any board members have any questions of Ms. Maston relative to the intent to create this detached ADU or a DADU, DADU?
DADU.
Yeah.
I have a question. Ann Karasinski. When we voted last week, was this the type of dwelling that we voted on when they changed the zoning, Matthew?
Yeah, that's correct. So
would she have the opportunity to make it bigger based on what the town passed this past week?
So, I mean, it's a good question. So, yeah, this past week, the town voters approved an amendment to our accessory dwelling unit ordinance to increase the allowed square footage, both for detached and attached ADUs, up to 1,000 square feet. So I think if there was a new application, what's proposed is about 400 square feet. If there was, a new application in the future, Ms. Maston could go up to 1,000 square feet.
I just thought I'd point that out as in case it was something she had not thought about. Since it's
I had
passed.
not thought about it.
Yeah.
But we're happy with the one that has been designed. We don't need anything more than that.
Okay.
Thank you, though.
Thank you.
And sorry, Keith, just to note, Mike Jasmine, the code enforcement officer, is on the call as well. I see he has his hand raised. So
I see that.
Yeah.
Mike,
did you have something?
Yeah, good evening, guys. It's actually a little bit bigger than that. I mean, it's still well within all the parameters. This is a second story. This is a proposed second story situation. I've reviewed it with the builder and the owner. There's a fairly good size entry mudroom space in the first floor because it's a garage. It cannot exit through a garage. It has to have a dedicated exit to the outside, which it does, fire rated, which it does. So, I mean, I think, she would have to actually, well, it's up to her. She's happy. So, but everything seems to be in order for the space requirements of this project. Denny Amer, the previous owner, actually kind of started it on his own And I think Ms. Maston has a good plan to finish it and finish it correctly. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, if she builds it too nice, Dory, this is Brian, if you build it too nice and too big, people won't leave.
That's okay.
Thank you. Other questions of the board, of Mike, of the applicant, of board questions of the applicant? This is a public hearing. If there's any members of the public that would like to speak, please indicate so, and Matthew will
Right, yeah, right now, I don't see any members of the public wishing to provide comments. Just to note to the board, we haven't had too many of these detached ADU applications recently. So just to remind the board, if approved, either the principal dwelling unit or the detached ADU has to be owner occupied. And they can't be subdivided or transferred to condominium ownership. So that's kind of one of the requirements of our ADU ordinance.
Thank you. Thank you. I think Mike addressed this, but I just have a question. This is a garage. Are there vehicles stored in that building normally?
There's not currently, but it's set up in such a manner that it could be done and done legally.
Good. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions from board members?
No.
Any members of the public?
No members of the public with their hands raised.
Okay, and Dory, this is one last chance. When we close the public hearing, we won't be able to hear from you again, at least within this hearing tonight. Anything you need to add?
Not for my own, but a huge thank you for the listening to all of that permitting process before my hearing for the last 2 meetings. You have a lot of patience, and I appreciate the work that all of you do.
Thank you very much.
The only other thing I would add real quick, Keith, that we haven't addressed, I'm sure it's somewhere in all the paperwork, but I know this particular packet's, a lot of pages. This property is on municipal sewer. So we're not concerned with septage or any of that stuff, which is normally the big issue with these types of projects. So this project is good to go from the septage perspective. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Appreciate that comment and that pointing that out to us. It is germane to the special exception application. Anything else, Dory?
I think it's worth mentioning. Hopefully, I don't do any damage by mentioning it, but my home is one of few that I actually have Keene water. So I don't know if that matters, but I'm at the furthest end and my home is actually serviced by Keene, although my bill comes from Swanzey.
Right, you're actually part of the North Swansea Water Precinct over on the Matthews Road, so you're 100% correct, Dory. Your water comes from Keene.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. Other questions, comments, board members? Anyone else?
Hey Keith, I'll mention something real quick. It's just a
Absolutely,
quick one.
Adam.
So we've come across a couple of these applications in the past, in terms of accessory dwellings, both attached and detached. And it's just to note that this particular property, the way the buildings are both set back far from the road, and is also, I'm very familiar with the property. I live actually down the street.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of driving back and forth, this is an established building that has been there for a number of years, and there's not a lot of impact to the the visual of the property, even though the use of that particular property may be very different. So it's just it's very interesting to see these types of cases, and this is a case where things kind of seem to fall very nicely. So just a comment.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments? Any board member, anyone else? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. Any other comments before we go to the questions from the board? Let me see, Adam, and anything else?
Nope.
No. Brian?
No.
Bill?
No.
Okay. Any other questions, Ann? Any other thing,
Nope.
anything to add? No? All right. We can move to the questions. Give me a moment here. All right. Whoop. Excuse me. All right. First question, the proposed use is similar to one or more of the uses already authorized in the district and is in appropriate locations for such a use. Adam?
Yeah, I'll say yes, it is a appropriate location for the use, being the setbacks and, the low impact on visually to the other abutters. And additionally, there are proposed uses similar in nature throughout Swanzey. And so I think this fits within that parameter.
Sure, thank you. Brian?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Thank you. Ann?
Yes.
Thank you. I will concur. It's a residential use, happens to be in an existing building, which I think just eases on the development pressure a little bit, and certainly has a nice location relative to where the two buildings are on the site. So moving on to question 2. Do we agree that such approval would not reduce the value of any property within the district nor otherwise be injurious, obnoxious, or offensive to the neighborhood? Brian, do you agree?
I agree, and there's no evidence presented to the contrary.
Excellent, thank you. Bill?
I agree with Brian. Yes.
Thank you. Ann?
Yes.
Thank you. Adam?
I will say yes, I agree with Brian, and reiterating my previous statement about it being within the same footprint and building for that matter of what is already there. So yes.
Yep. Good. Do we agree that there will be no there'll be no nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians? Bill?
As you said, Keith, it's just an expansion of a residential use and a minor expansion, so there's no reason to anticipate any nuisance to either vehicles or pedestrians.
Thank you. Ann?
Yes.
Very good. Adam?
Yes, I agree with Bill.
Brian?
Yes, I agree with Bill.
Thank you very much.
Keith, did you vote on that one?
I will vote yes, sorry.
Okay.
Thanks, Matthew, right on top of things. Number 4, do we agree that adequate and appropriate facilities will be provided for the proper operations of the proposed use? Ann?
Yes.
Adam?
I will say our enforcement officer has basically testified to the adequate and appropriate facilities. So I trust his judgment, and I would say yes.
Very good. Brian?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes, I agree with Adam.
And I do as well. I've always been a proponent of accessory dwelling units. I think they're a great way to add to the housing stock of a community without a major development needing to happen. It's a nice organic way of growing it, and this one seems to be among the ones we've seen. We've seen some good ones, and this is another good one, I believe, in terms of its location and the way it sits into the setting. It's what I think the legislature intended accessory dwelling units to look like, quite frankly, when they passed this as a state law. So this is good. I'd like to see more ADUs coming through our process here, and hopefully we will. So I agree. All right, we've answered in the affirmative unanimously on this special exception application. Entertain a motion.
This is Ann Karasinski. I'd make a motion that we accept this application as presented.
I will second that.
Okay, it's been moved by Ann, seconded by Adam to approve the application for a special exception here for this detached accessory dwelling unit on Matthews Road. Any question on the motion? Hearing, seeing none, I will ask Beverly to run down the roll.
Karasinski,
Yes.
Bill Hotwalker,
Yes.
Brian Rutgers,
Yes.
Adam Mulhern,
Yes.
Keith Tebow.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously.
All right,
We're cruising along.
Thank you.
thank you.
Good luck.
All right. We'll move on. Does anyone, it is a little bit after 9. I think we're well in hand of taking up the next application. Is there anyone wants to say anything about the timing at this point in time, or just move on?
Move on.
Move on. All right. Thanks, Ann. Next, ZBA case number 21-006, variance application 17 Suburban LLC request to grant a variance from section 5, article B3 of the zoning ordinance for an addition to the dwelling at 23 Suburban Acres Road to allow a side setback of 14 feet where a 20-foot setback is required. The subject property is shown at tax map 18 lot 82 located in the business district. Once again, we'll seat myself, Adam, Brian, Bill, and Ann, our 5 elected members of the CBA for this. Matthew? Want to give us a little background here?
So the subject property, it's located at the end of Suburban Acres Road, which is a relatively short road ending in a cul-de-sac. So the subject property, the property lines, approximate property lines are outlined in red here. Suburban Acres Road, it's on the east side of Wilson Pond. It's just off Route 12, so you can kind of see Route 12 at the edge of this aerial map here.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll go to the next slide, showing the proposed addition. So what's proposed is a 10 by 10 foot addition on the north side of the dwelling. Proposed for a 3-season porch use and also an additional entrance into that existing single-family dwelling. Keith, as you mentioned, the proposed setback from that northern side property line is 14 feet. The property is in the business district and a minimum 20-foot side setback is required. So it's an encroachment of 6 feet into that 20-foot setback. The following slide is just a visual representation of that addition provided by the applicant. So you can see the existing dwelling on the left-hand side here, and that proposed addition sticking out. So it's a single-story dwelling. The addition would be 1 story in size. You can see there's an existing fence that runs approximately along the property line between this property and the property to the north. We did send out public hearing notices to abutting property owners. I had a phone call with the neighbor who lives to the north who told me that they didn't have any concerns about the variance request. They didn't provide anything in writing, but didn't have any concerns. No concerns have been provided by town department heads either. And Sybil Hall, who's the property owner, is on the call this evening. She had emailed me to let me know that she was having some connectivity issues. So Sybil, hopefully your connection issues have been resolved and you can hear us and see what's going on.
Yes, I can.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
So that's all I had, Keith, for background information on this application.
Thank you.
Matthew,
yes.
question. This is Brian.
Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
There's only 6 houses on that street, I think. Is this the second one on the right as you're coming down?
It's the third one.
Oh, it's the
on
third
the
one.
right,
The
at the
last
very
one.
end, the
Yeah.
last one. Yep.
Thank you.
Looking at the map, the vision, the bird's eye view there, help to orient me. It looks like there's already an addition off the end of this building?
Yeah.
So
Isn't
is
that the north side? Isn't that already yeah, where the white car is? Is that what you're talking about?
that's the way I see it, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at the street view image of it. I guess I would have the property owner address that if she's able to.
That'd be great.
Yes. Yes, and the what you think, well, what looks like the addition was a shed when we bought it.
Okay.
And then we got permission to convert it into a bedroom. And at the time, we didn't think so, but we really would have liked, you know, even at the time, had we just didn't think about it, added the screen porch right along with it. The addition was only done, well, they just finished it actually in the fall of last year. So this is all very new. Or not the addition, but the conversion from whatever that used to be, whatever the previous owners used it for, to the bedroom.
Oh.
If that makes sense.
I think you can see a better picture of it, Keith, if you go down to page 78 and you turn your head painfully to the left, and then you can see the car in front of sort of the shed-like structure.
That shed-like structure has come down, but was there?
I think she meant that they've turned it into a bedroom. Is that right?
Well, they,
oh,
yes, they, let's see, we had to put in a Alaskan slab down, which wasn't there before. And then just the whole walls had to be restructured and improved. It would not have passed as a bedroom. Oh, Mike's there. Mike can probably explain it better.
So the roof, you kind of matched up the roof. You brought that roof up from that shed and expanded the walls out, and to what's existing today, it sort of looks like seamless to us. The picture, the colored picture looks seamless, but in addition that's now just all built out, and you're looking to expand upon what's there today, which includes that little bump out, but it's just been improved.
Right, and the bump out here looks more like a building, but we're really just looking for a screened area for the summer.
Yeah, that seems to so that represents pretty well what you're looking to do.
Yes.
Okay. All right, that makes sense. Thank you. Other questions of the applicant or?
Mike, did you have anything to add to that? Mike Jasper?
I just wanted to, not that Sybil didn't do a fine job of explaining her own project, but I really wanted to add some clarity to what happened there. Effectively, there was it wasn't really a shed, it was just a poorly constructed part of the house that they were using shed-like when Ms. Hall bought it. And because it was not in the best condition and really shouldn't have been used and converted, excuse me, I asked them to tear it down and replace as it was, which they basically did. We needed to go a little bit higher with the roof to accommodate some dryer vents and things like that. But effectively, that's what that was. It was done. It was done correctly, and it was done with my full knowledge. Appreciate it. Thank you.
That's all been yeah, I see it's been rectified now, and we're looking to add on to that end. Now, I know the applicant has mentioned a screen porch, but is there going to be entrance into the building from inside that addition?
Well, you go in.
There is.
You go in. Yeah, we were hoping to have two doors so that you can go in from the driveway, but also exit the screen porch to the yard and the back. And then because we're putting it right in front of the door, you would now go into the building through that. Because if we move the porch up or down, it would block an existing window, and that sort of didn't look right to us. We just wanted it where no windows were.
Okay. So there's an existing door on that end of the house now that you're looking to use.
Yes, there is.
Are there other existing, where are the other existing doors into the house?
One is in the front, yeah, somewhere right here, more to the left. Somewhere, yeah, probably somewhere there.
And on the back side, is there any?
There is a sliding door just going right straight into the yard. A glass door, glass slider.
Okay, thank you. Would we have, and I guess this would be possibly a question for Matthew.
Mhm.
Other than I mean, because there is an existing door on that end that's being used and that cuts into a setback, just for my curiosity, would we also have if that same screened porch area were put onto one of the other two entrances to the building, would that have a similar setback issue? Can you tell from what information we have in front of us right now? And I guess I'll go back to the applicant in a minute, just so you know that, and ask what is the reasoning for putting it at the end, this end of the building, as opposed to maybe some other entries you may have also available, because it's, you know, this is encroaching into a setback in a way that generally this board has not seen its way to approving, but.
Yeah, I can just briefly, you know, my understanding is that the existing dwelling is either at or very close to the 30-foot front setback from the right-of-way along Suburban Acres Road. So you know, the proposed addition is 10 by 10 feet. So that would put it within the front setback if it was placed on the front. I don't know the setback distance from the rear property line. Again, what I'm showing here is just approximate locations of property lines. So I don't really want to assume where that addition would be in relation to the rear property line. One thing that Mike had mentioned to me is, I think it was 2 years ago, we did pass an amendment to the zoning ordinance that, just for reference, that allows a property owner to put up an accessory structure up to 200 square feet in size within 5 feet from a property line. One accessory structure on a residential property. This is, you know, 100 square feet attached to the structure, but just for reference.
Doesn't quite meet the same definition, but I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Huh.
Matthew, by structure, do you mean a shed?
Yeah, that was kind of the intention behind that, was to allow for a storage shed to be located closer to a property line. You know, I think.
So basically you're saying that if she didn't have it attached to the house, she could have it closer to the property line?
Yeah.
Potentially, but.
Right, it could be. Not necessarily guaranteed it would be approved, but it could.
Right.
All right, other questions of the board?
Well, Keith, I'll just, along the lines I think you were thinking about, or what you brought up, there just seems to be potentially alternatives that may fit within the letter of the current law that we have in front of us.
Right.
So I guess my question would be the applicant, have you explored, you know, these other options, these potential options to fit the needs of a, you know, screened in porch? I understand the use of a porch and why it's, you know, something that someone would want, and the applicant may want, but if there's other options potentially available, why not there?
Yes, we have looked at the other doors, and the one in the back where I said it's a glass slider, that one we just, yes, we would like a screen in porch against all the mosquitoes because there's a little bit the swampy area back there, but we also would like to just be out in the open. So we left the slider where we said, well, we wouldn't want it there because again, it would block some of the sunlight coming in, and that would be just a nice place to sit out there prior to mosquito season or so. And then in the front was just the main entrance, and it felt, I think we were still gonna have needed a variance for the front, and also because it's the main entrance, we didn't always want to walk through the screen porch. So it's just a personal, it's a we would like to, situation, and that's how we settled on the side, to put it there on the side, if possible.
Keith, if I may,
sure.
Just it sounds like there, I understand the questions the board has about alternative locations, and I guess it's something I would, if the applicant wanted to ask for a continuance and take some time and look at that alternate location. I understand like the rear side of the building might be more of an option than the front side of the building. Just an option for the applicant if they wanted to take more time to look at that before the board votes on the application.
Okay, if that's.
I have a question.
Yes.
Perhaps to help the applicant. If we look to the, I guess to the east, is that going up that hill? Is that the backside of Route 12 where the gas station and what is being planned?
Yes.
How far is it up that hill?
It is right back there because the house across the road there, the last one at the end, also my friend and I also own, so we're co-owners. And it's the gas station is going to be right in the back, back there. We are.
And next to that gas station, if I'm not mistaken, they're exploring some apartments.
Yes.
So you're,
and they are more to the bottom.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm just thinking about the enjoyment of the screen house where you'll see more people, more traffic, more whatever. If
right,
it were
and
on
that's
the back
probably
of the
why
house.
we chose to put the screen to this building and not to the other one we own, just because that one was so much closer to the gas station, and we were not quite sure what's going to happen in the backyard there, but we felt here we still had a chance of, looking north and being okay.
Well, north is where the sun isn't.
Right, but sometimes we just don't have other choices.
Right.
Or
Well, I guess if Matthew's suggestion to the applicant is acceptable, would it be fair to say you would consider, and this is the applicant, a continuance just to explore what you might have for options on the building and come back and see us?
Yes, as long as Matthew will explain to me how we come back. Are we just being put back on for next month, or?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and just to be clear, Sybil, I'm not telling you to do that. I just wanted to offer that as an option. And if you did want to continue it, we would just continue this to the next meeting, which is April 19th. And it would be the first application on the agenda for that evening, but it's
Right.
entirely up to you. So.
Okay. Yeah, I think April 19th. We'll look at it again. Again, it's an aesthetic and how we felt about the use of the space. We understand we're asking for a variance that just to please us, the neighbors would be affected by the zoning. So I'm feeling it's probably, we're probably gonna still prefer it where we originally, how we put it in the application. But yeah, let's think about it again, and if you don't mind,
No, that's
talking
fine.
to us again in April, that would be great.
Okay, I'll ask a board member to make a motion to that effect.
Well, this is Brian. I'll make a motion, but I do have a question first, if that's okay. Mr.
Sure.
So if I'm understanding this, if they do, and correct me if I'm wrong, the front door, if they do a screen porch there, they're going to need a variance because there's within the setback to the front. If they do a screen door to the side, which is where their driveway is and the main entrance to their house, they're going to need a variance for the setback to the side. And if they do a screen to the back, then they come out of their driveway, walk all the way around the house to the back of their house to enter their house through a screened entrance. Is that?
That's not the main entrance, Brian, as I understood it.
That's correct. The main entrance is on the front, on the road part, on the road side.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I would have liked that because I think that would have gone for the side screen, but it isn't.
All right. Did you get your question answered, Brian?
I did, thank you. I'll make a motion that per the applicant's suggestion, we'll continue this case to April the 19th.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Yep, I'll second it.
Thanks, Adam. Moved and seconded to continue this to our next meeting on April 19th. Any questions on the motion? Terrific. Beverly?
Ann Krasinski,
Yes, I think we should continue the motion.
Bill Hotwalker,
Yes.
Brian Rutgers,
Yes.
Adam Mulhern,
Yes.
Keith Tebow.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, the motion passes.
All right. Does any board member have any problem with us diving into the next one?
No.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sybil. We'll talk to you next month.
Yes, bye-bye.
Appreciate it. All right. I don't hear anyone pushing back, so we will open up ZBA number 21-007, another variance application, Monadnock Land Planning on behalf of Falone LLC, request to grant a variance from section 5, article B3 of the zoning ordinance for an addition to the building at 12 Business Center Drive to allow a side setback of 5 feet where a 20-foot setback is required. The subject property is shown at tax map 36 lot 5 located in the business district. Once again, seated for this will be myself, Adam, Brian, Bill, and Ann. Matthew, can you tee us up before we hear a little bit maybe from the applicant and let us know where are we and what are we doing or looking at?
All right, thank you, Keith. So as you mentioned, the building where the addition is proposed is located in the Airport Business Center. This is a property that's located on the west side of Old Homestead Highway, adjacent to the Keene Airport property. There are several existing commercial office buildings on that site. So this is where powered generator is located in true north. And there's also the airport storage facility, self-storage facility. So the proposed addition is to the building that's occupied by Baudelaire Soaps. And so I have here outlined in red, and it's shown in kind of the darker gray color is where the addition is proposed. And you can see the dashed property line in relation to that addition. So the property line comes, directly east from the west here, and then you'll notice, or actually I'll scroll down to the next slide here. You'll notice there's a jog in the property line at this point. So it's running straight and then jogs to the north and then continues generally directly to the east, to Old Homestead Highway. The proposed addition is about 2,600 square feet in size. You can see the existing building footprint here. The existing building is really right at the 20-foot setback line at this southeasterly corner of the building. Again, because of that jog in the property line, as you move to the west, the existing building is located at a greater distance from that side property line. So the variance request, technically it's at its closest point. That addition is 5.79 feet from that side property line, and that's at the southeastern corner here. At the southwestern corner, the addition would be 16.05 feet back from the property line. And that, again, that's just because of the, the orientation of that property line. So public hearing notices were sent to abutting property owners, posted in town and published in the Keene Sentinel. The applicant did provide an email correspondence that I sent to the board this afternoon from the Stanleys, who are the property owners here, map 36 lot 2, Eric and Mary Stanley. They reported having no concerns about that addition. The applicant also provided an email correspondence just documenting their attempts to contact New Hampshire Fire Protection, which is this property here owned by J&L Realty Corp, map 36 lot 3. The property owner noted that they were unable to make contact with this abutting property owner, haven't received any comments from them. So as I mentioned, we sent out certified mail to the property owners and haven't heard from them either at this point. And finally, we did not receive any comments from town department heads on this application. This application was submitted by Monadnock Land Planning, and Dave Bergeron from Monadnock Land Planning is on the call this evening. So that's all I have for background information. If there are any questions, if not, I would turn it over to Dave.
Any questions for Matthew at this point? Board members? I would remind this is a public hearing. If there are members of the public that are here to speak to this, we will get to you in a moment or so. So Dave, if you have anything to add to what we've already put on the table, the proverbial table at this point.
Sure. Just a little bit of background to start with. The building is owned by Bob Furlone LLC. The tenant or the occupant of the building is the Baudelaire Company. Baudelaire is an artisan's bath and body products company. Yep. They specialize in premier bath and body soaps. They're not a manufacturer, but they're a distributor, importer and distributor of products. They import products from all over the world and sell locally on their website. They also sell to a lot of large chains, such as brick and mortar chains like TJ Maxx and Wholesale Foods and places like that, Crate and Barrel. They currently have about 7 employees at this location, as well as a couple of 2 owners, and they are looking to expand. Their business is doing well. They're looking to expand the building and add some additional people, 3 or 4 people to the team over the next 12 to 18 months to increase their production or their sales. The reason for the expansion, as you see it, is if you look at the building, you'll see that the building to the lower side, there is a door on the lower side, a delivery and service door, and in the upper right side of the building, there's also an overhead door. We're near that. Yeah, there's a dumpster there, and there's an overhead door there. And the other part of the front of the building, where the main entrance is office space. So what they're looking to do is expand their warehousing and distribution area, which is towards the rear of the building, and that is the kind of the reason why the expansion is in that direction. Also, parking, as you can see, is based on what their employees are now and what their employees are proposed to be. They'll need almost all of those parking spaces that they have now, so they don't want to lose any parking spaces. And to the top of the page and next to the existing building is an existing stormwater retention pond, which will be expanded a little bit and added to handle the runoff from the addition. So really the only way to expand the building, the only physical location that they could expand the building that doesn't that works because of the internal operation of the building, as well as how the material is delivered and shipped out, and the other restrictions of the site. The expanding to the back is really the only viable expansion area for this use, and to be able to add that additional space that they need. This is what they've looked at. Is we looked at a couple of different expansions to come up with this square footage. They would have liked a little bit bigger expansion, but because of the jog in the property line, and because of the need for variance, we settled on this configuration. It keeps the addition far enough away from the building so that it can be constructed, far enough away from the property line so that the addition can be constructed without having to cross the property line, and so it can continue to be maintained without having to cross the property line. And it also leaves some room for some drainage in the back to make sure that the runoff from the addition is directed into the retention pond at the top of the page. So that's kind of a little bit in a nutshell what the company is and what they do, and why the need of the expansion and where the expansion is, to make it work for them, and to make it work for the interior configuration of the building. This was the best and only location for the addition to be able to allow them to continue to be able to operate out of the building while the expansion is happening, and to continue to use and to expand the building. I can go down through the questions if you want, or if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Any questions of board members of Dave right now?
Dave, would you like me to pull up the floor plan? Would that be helpful to show?
Yeah.
It was included in the packet. I just don't have it, so I'm just gonna get that quickly. If anyone has any questions in the meantime.
This is Ann Karasinski. I have one question.
Sure.
You're talking about diverting the water so that it goes into the existing retention pond. So there wouldn't be any water then going over to Eric and Mary Stanley's property. And
That's correct. Yeah.
They've expressed they've got no issues with what's going on. And
yes.
So the people who own the other property, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
The people who own the other property, the other abutters that are really the people that are within the 6 feet or that we're talking about, they've been completely unresponsive.
Yeah, Mr. Perlone tried a number of ways to contact them through telephone and through sending them copies of these plans to try and talk to them a little bit about it. And they, I guess, they haven't responded to any of our requests to speak to them regarding the addition. They certainly have gotten a copy of the notice for this proposed expansion, and Bob, I believe, sent them a copy of the plans so that they would have something to look at. But he has not been able to get a hold of anybody to actually talk to them about it.
All right. Well, thank you.
And we'll certainly be. I mean, the rear of the building will be configured so that the drainage from the addition will be directed into the retention pond, so it won't flow towards the abutters properties. It'll flow into our retention pond and on from there.
All right.
If you can change the slide to the next after this one here, go ahead. What you were doing first. I'm sorry.
All right, is everyone able to see the floor plan?
Yeah. So
this is the floor plan of the addition.
This is the floor plan of the existing building as it sits today. And you can see that it's a little hard to see, but on the upper left side of the building is where there's an overhead door in that back section right up there. There's an overhead door and also an entrance door in that, which is an employee entrance door, and the overhead door is also for shipping and for receiving in that area. In the front of the building, you have all the offices where the main entrance is, which is in the lower, the double doors in the section, in the lower part of the plan. And to the right of that, over to that far side of the building, there are two overhead doors which also are used for shipping products out, and so these overhead doors are necessary for them to continue to operate and to be able to work while they're while the addition is being done. The addition would be towards the top of the page. Is the rear of the building. That is the area where the addition would be, back in that area. So it wouldn't interfere with any of the offices in the front or any of the overhead doors that are used for shipping and receiving. So the addition can happen while work is still going on inside the building without interfering with the operation of the building, operation of the business. And that was really kind of the reason why I think that became the area, I guess you could say the special conditions of the building and the layout of the building really limit the place that the addition can go to that location, which is why we're requesting the variance for the addition in that location, is to because of the configuration of the building. It's really the only place that we can do the addition.
Okay. Any other questions of Dave? Can run through the questions, Dave, if you'd like.
Okay. The first question is granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. I think decreasing the setback would not be contrary to the public interest, because the existing buildings, the setback is to allow a separation between buildings, and the existing buildings, the Stanley's house is about 380 feet away from the property line where this addition would be, and the New Hampshire Fire building is about 70 feet away. So both buildings are located farther away than what the setback is required. They won't be infringing on each other, and it would allow this building to expand and hire more people and increase the tax base. Granting the variance would observe the spirit of the ordinance. Again, because the 20-foot setback would between the structures, it'll be more than the allowed 20-foot setback, because of the existing. All the lots are existing lots. They're all have existing buildings on them, and all of they will still be greater than the minimum setback as far as the separation between the buildings. So there won't be anybody built. The two buildings won't be like 10 feet apart. The closest one is going to be 70 feet away. And again, all these buildings are all located in the business district. They're all business-owned properties. Granting the variance would do substantial justice. The business, as I mentioned, the business has grown. They need to expand because of the interior layout. It's really the best and only location to be able to expand the business and give it the additional space that it needs without interfering with the day-to-day operation of the business while this is going on, and as well as limited by the location of the offices in the front, the location of the delivery and receiving doors on both sides of the building, as well as the retention pond on the upper side of the building. All those areas restrict the area that can be used for an expansion to this rear portion of the building. Granting the variance will not diminish the surrounding property values. Again, the abutting properties are located. The closest abutting property is 70 feet from the property line, so it won't be impacting that business. They won't be closer than what the setback requires, and it'll allowing this business to expand and grow will help to improve the values of all properties in this area. The special conditions of this property that distinguish it from other properties in the area. Again, it's the location, as I mentioned, I think it's the location of the existing building on the site, which and the other configuration, the configuration of the interior of the building, as well as the exterior, the location of the offices in the front, in the shipping and receiving areas, as well as the retention pond, all limit the ability for this building to be expanded. It forces the expansion to the rear of the building for the type of use that they need, which is additional warehousing and storage. It's the only location that they can really expand this building. No fair or substantial relationship exists between the general purpose of the ordinance provisions and the specific application. Again, the 20-foot setback is designed to promote space between buildings and abutting lots. These are all existing lots that have buildings constructed on them. The closest building is 70 feet away from this property line on the abutting property for New Hampshire Fire. The other building is over 280 feet away. So it does not affect the setback between those uses. The proposed use is a reasonable one. The variance is really necessary for this business to be able to expand and grow. It'll allow the business to, the variance is the minimum amount that they need to be able to have the space they need to expand their business, and to allow, we've tried to design it so that it will not affect the abutting properties. It'll give us safe access around the building to be able to continue to maintain the building, as well as construct it and maintain the building. And it will be far enough away from the property line to allow for us to control drainage from our building and control it into our retention pond. And section B, owing to special conditions of the property that set forth above that distinguish it from other properties in the area, it cannot be reasonably used in strict conformance of the ordinance. Again, I think it's basically, it's, as I mentioned, it's the configuration of the building and the building in its environment, and how the building is surrounded and used, as far as the delivery doors and the shipping and receiving doors, as well as the location of the office, the location of the retention pond. All those things limit the ability of the building to be able to expand to this area in this location. I think those are the special conditions, I think, that require us to apply for a variance for this expansion. And I'll take any questions anybody's got.
Matthew, this is Ann Kersinski.
Keith, I think you might be muted.
Oh, sorry, Keith.
I'm sorry, I was. Ann, go ahead.
Oh, yes. Have we had has there been any input from any of the other departments? Like, there's no concern here with, fire, any safety issues, anything like that? Doesn't appear to be.
No, there are not. And this, the proposed addition would also require a site plan review application.
Okay.
And a building permit. But I mean, at this point, fire department hasn't weighed in with any concerns on that addition.
The addition itself, we're not really seeing a problem with the existing parking, any of that might have to change, or that's all site review stuff.
Yeah, so that's something we would look at with the site plan review application. I mean, as Dave mentioned, it's on the rear side of the building. We're really not designed in such a way not to impact the existing parking lot or loading and delivery areas.
Yep,
so,
I see that.
Yeah, right now they're providing more than the minimum number of parking stalls required for both the existing building and the addition. So I don't see any issues there. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions of Matthew? Mike, the applicant? Not seeing any. Anything to add, Dave, before we close the public hearing on this? And any members of the public out there, again, that look to speak, look interested in this project? Matthew, you seeing anything out there?
Right now, I don't have any members of the public looking to provide comment.
Thank you. Dave, anything?
I think I'm good.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Unless I hear otherwise from board members, we'll close the public hearing. Anything to say relative to board members before we move to the questions? Anyone?
Well, I just, quick comment. I know we struggle with, variance applications about, impacting neighboring properties, in terms of the type of business. Now, I know this would carry with this particular property. Once the building's there, it's there. But soap is pretty quiet. So I would imagine in terms of impact and so forth, the neighbors, not that they've expressed any concerns given their lack of response. We'll have to take that as a affirmative. So I know that's an issue, but it sounds like there's a lot of positives that this particular project is giving to the to the property itself and the community at large. So it's just a comment.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Keith?
Bill?
I would just observe for Matthew that this is a clear example of how far off our tax maps are. If you look at the lot where the fire business is, doesn't look anything like what we have on a tax map. So good thing they passed that warrant article, Matthew.
Yeah.
But also just to speak about the property owner himself, he's one of the best business citizens that we have in Swanzey. He's built very, very nice buildings that we all should be proud of and has brought good tenants. And I would agree with Adam. There's some unique characteristics to this property that will hopefully give us opportunity to approve it.
Thanks, Bill. Anyone else? All right. We can move to the questions here. If everyone is comfortable. Could the variance be granted without being contrary to the public interest? How about if we start with Bill?
I'd say yes, and for a lot of the reasons that Dave mentioned, that one of the main reasons for granting or for having side setbacks is to keep property structures a certain distance apart. And in this particular instance, the public, in terms of the immediate neighborhood, is really not impacted. And in general, this is an isolated location on this lot, so it's, in my opinion, not going to have any impact on the public interest.
Thanks, Bill. Ann?
I agree with Bill. There's, I don't see anything that's contrary to the public interest. And as people are driving by, they're not even going to know about it.
Okay, Adam?
Well, I think I'll take your lead on this, Keith, but I like looking at it from this point of view. Where does the public gain from denying this and this particular variance? And I don't see it. So from that perspective, I would say yes to this.
Thank you. Brian?
Yes.
I'll concur, and thank you, Adam, for bringing that up. There's no corresponding gain to the public if this was denied. So I agree, I concur. We'll go to the second question. Would the spirit of the ordinance be observed if the variance were granted? How about Ann?
Yes, I believe it. I believe it will be, yes.
Thank you. Adam?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes, and for the same reason that I mentioned in number one, I think Dave made a good point with regard to that.
Yeah, I think so too. I agree. I concur. Go to question 3. Would granting the variance do substantial justice? Adam?
I think, yes, it would do substantial justice to the property, the ability for it to expand without impacting significantly to the business at large, meaning they can continue to operate. So, from those perspectives, again, I think this variance would grant substantial justice.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Adam. Brian?
I agree with Adam.
Okay. Bill?
I agree, and for the reason that Adam mentioned in number 1, that there is a benefit to the owner, obviously, but there's no negative to the general public.
Okay. Ann?
Yes.
I'll concur. Down to 4. Could the variance be granted without diminishing surrounding property values? Brian?
Yes, there's no evidence to the contrary.
Thank you. Bill?
I agree with Brian, yes.
Great. Ann?
I agree with Bill.
Okay. I'll concur. We see nothing here. It appears to be having a negative, diminishing any surrounding property values. Number 5.
What about
I'll
Adam?
agree with Ann. So,
What about
yeah.
Adam?
Oh, I'm sorry, Adam.
Adam, yeah.
Thank you. Sorry about that. All right. Do special conditions of the property exist that distinguish it from other properties in the area? Let's see. Ian?
Well, in the way that the current building is situated, yeah, I believe that's a special condition, and that steps are being taken to consider the neighbors. So,
Sure.
Yes.
Okay. Adam?
Yeah, I'll say yes, and I agree with Dan in terms of the layout of the building itself and how it's been situated in the property, and actually how the layout of the building is built internally. There really is no logical additional space for warehousing and their suggested use in any other spot on the property without omitting necessary elements of that property like drainage / parking spaces. I think that was something that was brought up, so yes.
Okay. Brian?
Yeah, so, I mean, there's a mini storage on one side, and then there's, on this one piece of property, there's, now 3 buildings plus a fenced-in storage area for trailers, and you got the airport behind it and houses across the street from it. So I think that little area is pretty unique.
Right. Okay. Bill?
Yeah, I don't know if anybody mentioned it, but the property line is unusual. And then I think somebody mentioned the drainage retention pond that's to the west. Doesn't allow expansion in that direction.
Okay. Thank you. Owing to the special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other property in the area, do we agree there is not a fair and substantial relationship between the general public purpose of this ordinance and the specific application of the provision to the property?
Keith, did you vote on the previous?
I did, but it was in passing. I did concur. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
All right. Bill, can you help us with this one? A1.
I think for the reasons that we all expressed with regard to our interpretation of special conditions of the property, that I would agree that granting the variance would observe the general purpose of the ordinance and how we specifically apply it to this provision, to this property.
Okay. Ann?
Yes, I agree with Bill.
Thank you. Adam?
I couldn't say it better, yes.
Sure you could.
Brian certainly could. Brian?
Yeah, I agree with Adam, who agreed with Ann, who agreed with Bill.
All right, I concur. And then finally is the proposed use a reasonable one? We'll start with Brian.
Yes, based on the application, the applicant's desire to grow their business, it certainly is reasonable.
Okay. Bill?
Yes.
Thank you. Ann?
Yes.
Thank you. Adam?
And yes.
Yeah, certainly. It's just a continuation of the use that's being used right now. Nice to see a local company doing well and need something like this. All right, we've been through the questions. We don't need to go to B. Entertain a motion on this application.
This is Ann Karasinski. I'd like to make a motion that we accept this application as it stands.
Thank you very much. Second?
I shall second it.
Thank you, Adam. Moved and seconded to approve the application of a variance of Section 5, Article B3 for the property at 12 Business Center Drive. Any questions on the motion?
Nope.
Hearing none, seeing none, I don't think, no. Beverly?
Okay, Ann Karasinski,
Yes.
Bill Hotwalker,
Yes.
Brian Rutgers,
Yes.
Adam Mulhern,
Yes.
Keith Tebow.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously, 5-0.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Good job, Dave.
Best luck.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
So our fifth one has been
Dispatched.
dispatched. There you go. Continued. Any other business to become before the board? Matthew, anything to add? Any last minute words of wisdom?
Nothing this evening, Keith.
All right. I won't ask Mike. He'll have too many words of wisdom for us. So thank you all. It was a bit of a marathon, but we got through a lot here, and we're well set up going into next month. It's a busy time of year anyway, as we know. It always happens. So we get busy this time of year.
Keith?
Yes, Bill.
Just one quick point.
Please.
Many of you expressed concerns about the West Swanzey Water Company, and that is something that Matthew is bringing to the Board of Selectmen. So if any of you would be interested in participating in that discussion and any committee that's formed, please let Matthew know.
Here, here.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate that. All right. Entertain a motion to adjourn?
This is Ann Karasinski. I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
Jeez. Very good, Ann. You're right there. We have a second.
I'll second it again.
All right. Moved and seconded. Motion to adjourn. Beverly.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Jillian.
Okay.
Thanks.
Ann Karasinski,
Yes.
Bill Hotwalker,
Yes.
Brian Rutgers,
Yes.
Adam Mulhern,
Yes.
Keith Tebow.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, we're adjourned.
Have a good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for being here.
Good night.
Have a good night.
Good work. Good work,
Good
everyone.
job.